Hi there, welcome to Ravenhurst Bedtime Stories. My name is Miss Scott and today we're going to be reading the first chapter of one of my favourite books called Horrid Henry's Underpants, and the author is called Francesca Simon. So have a look at the front cover there and let's read the first chapter. This first chapter is called Horrid Henry Eats a Vegetable, and I'll show you the first illustration and I'll start reading. Gross, yuck, Horrid Henry glared at the horrible, disgusting food slithering in his plate. It was all lumpy and bumpy. How did Mum and Dad and Perfect Peter swallow this kind of yuck? Henry poked at the white, wobbly clump. It looked like brains. It felt like brains. Maybe it was. Ugh. Horrid Henry pushed away his plate. I can't eat this, moaned Henry. I'm going to be sick. Henry, cauliflower cheese is delicious, said Dad. And very nutritious, said Mum. I love it, said Perfect Peter. Can I have seconds? It's nice to know that somebody appreciates my cooking, said Dad. He frowned at Henry. But I hate vegetables, said Henry. Yuck, vegetables were so healthy and they tasted so vegetably. I want pizza, he said. Well, you can't have pizza, said Dad. Well, Ralph has pizza and chips every night at his house, said Henry, and Graham never has to eat his vegetables. I don't care what Ralph and Graham eat, said Mum. You need to eat more vegetables. I eat loads of vegetables. Name one, said Dad. Crisps. Crisps aren't vegetables, said Perfect Peter. No, said Mum, but go on, Henry. Ketchup? Ketchup is not a vegetable. Oh, it's impossible to cook for you, said Mum. You're such a picky eater, said Dad. Well, I eat loads of things, said Henry. Yeah, like what, said Dad. Crisps, burgers, pizza, chocolate, sweets, cake, biscuits, loads of food, said Horrid Henry. That's not very healthy, said Perfect Peter. You haven't had any fruit or vegetables. So, said Henry, mind your own business, Toad. Henry called me a toad, wailed Perfect Peter. Ribbit, said Horrid Henry. Don't be horrid, Henry, snapped Dad. You can't go on eating unhealthily, said Mum. Agreed, said Dad. Oh no, thought Horrid Henry, here it comes. Nag, nag, nag. If there were prizes for the best naggers in the world, his Mum and Dad would win every single time. I'll make a deal with you, Henry, said Mum. What? Said Henry suspiciously. Mum and Dad's deals usually involved doing something horrible for a tiny little reward. Well, there was no way he was falling for that one again. If you eat your vegetables for 5 nights in a row, we'll take you to Gobble and Go. Henry's heart skipped a beat. Gobble and Go? Gobble and Go? Only Henry's favourite restaurant in the whole wide world. Their motto was, the chips just keep on coming. There was music blaring from 20 loudspeakers and each table had its own TV. You could watch the chefs heat up your food in a big, giant microwave. And best of all, grown-ups never wanted to hang out there. They wanted to go as quickly as possible. And what fantastic food! There were jumbo burgers, huge pizzas, lakes of ketchup and as many chips as you could eat. 52 different flavours of ice cream and not a vegetable in sight. For some reason, Mum and Dad hated Gobble and Go. They'd never taken him once, and they'd sworn they'd never go again. And now, unbelievably, Mum was offering. Deal, said Henry. He said it quickly in case Mum changed her mind. So we're agreed, said Mum. You eat your vegetables every night for 5 nights, and then we'll go. Sure, whatever, said Horrid Henry. He'd agreed to do anything to have a meal at Gobble and Go. He'd even dance around in the nude if he had to. Hallelujah! We're going to go to Gobble and Go. Perfect Peter stopped eating his cauliflower. He didn't look very happy. I always eat my vegetables, said Peter. What's my reward? Health, said Mum. Day 1, string beans. Mum, Henry hasn't eaten any beans yet, said Peter. I have 2, lied Henry. No, you haven't. I've been watching. Oh, shut up, Peter, said Henry. Mum, Henry told me to shut up. Don't tell your brother to shut up, said Mum. It's rude, said Dad. Now eat your vegetables. Horrid Henry glared at his plate. It was teeming with slimy, sticky green beans. It looked like a whole plate of green worms. Yuck. He must have been mad green to eat vegetables for 5 nights in a row. Oh, he'd be poisoned by day 3. And then they'd be sorry. How could we have been so cruel? Mum would cry. We've killed our own son, they'd say. Oh, why did we make him eat green beans? They'd all sob. Too bad he'd be dead, so he couldn't scream. I told you so. We have a deal, Henry, said Dad. I know, said Henry. He cut the teeniest bit of string bean that he could. Go on, said Mum. Slowly, Horrid Henry lifted the fork and put the poison in his mouth. Ugh, what a horrible taste! Henry spat and spluttered as the sickening slither of string beans stuck in his throat. Water, he gasped, water! Perfect Peter speared 7 beans on his fork and popped them into his mouth without any problem. Great string beans, Dad, said Peter. They're so crispy and crunchy. Mine aren't, muttered Henry. I want to see you eat every single string bean, said Dad. Go on, otherwise we won't go to Gobble and Go. Horrid Henry scowled. No way was he eating even another mouthful. The taste was too horrible. But oh, Gobble and Go, those burgers, those chips, those TVs. There had to be another way. Surely he, King Henry the Horrible, could defeat a plate of greens. Horrid Henry worked out his battle plan. It was dangerous. It was risky. But what other choice did he have? First, he had to distract the enemy. You know, Mum, said Henry, pretending to chew. You were right. These beans are very tasty. Mum smiled. Dad smiled. We told you you'd like them. Henry pretended to swallow, and then he speared another bean with a fork. He pushed it around his plate. Mum got up to refill the water jug, and Dad turned to speak to her. Now was his chance. Horrid Henry stretched out his foot under the table and just lightly kicked Peter's leg. Look out, Peter! There's a spider on your leg! Where? Squealed Perfect Peter, looking frantically under the table. Leap, blonk! Henry's beans hopped onto Peter's plate. Peter raised his head. I don't see any spider, said Peter. Oh, I knocked it off, muttered Henry, pretending to chew vigorously. And then Peter saw his plate piled high with string beans. Oh, lucky me, I thought I'd finished. Thought Horrid Henry. Day 2, the broccoli. Blip! A piece of Henry's broccoli accidentally fell onto the floor. Henry kicked it under Peter's chair. Plop! Another piece of Henry's broccoli fell, and another, blip, plop, blip, plop, blip, plop. Soon the floor under Peter's chair was littered with broccoli bits. Mum, said Henry, Peter's making a mess. Don't be a telltale, Henry, said Dad. He's always telling on me, said Henry. Dad checked into Peter's chair. Peter, eat more carefully. You're not a baby anymore. Thought Horrid Henry. Day 3, peas. Squish! Henry flattened a pea under his knife. Squish! He flattened another one. Squish, squish, squish. And soon every pea was safely squashed and hidden under Henry's knife. Great dinner, Dad, said Henry, especially the peas. He quickly carried his plate to the sink and quickly rinsed under his knife. Dad beamed. Eating vegetables is making you so helpful, said Dad. Yes, said Henry sweetly. Oh, it's great to be helpful. Day 4, cabbage. Buzz, buzz. A fly landed on my cabbage, shrieked Henry. He swatted the air with his hand. Where? Said Mum. Here, said Henry. He leapt out of his seat. Now it's on the fridge. Buzz, said Henry under his breath. I don't see a fly, said Dad. Up there, said Henry, pointing to the ceiling. Mum looked up. Dad looked up. Peter looked up. Henry dumped a handful of cabbage into the bin, and then he sat back down at the table. Rats, said Henry. Oh, I can't eat the rest of my cabbage now, not after a filthy, disgusting, horrible fly has walked all over it. It's got germs and dirt. All right, said Dad. Leave the rest. I'm a genius, thought Horrid Henry, smirking. Only one more battle until vegetable victory. Day 5, sprouts. Mum ate her sprouts, Dad ate his sprouts, and Peter ate his sprouts. Henry glared at his sprouts. Of all the miserable, rotten vegetables ever invented, sprouts were definitely the worst. They were just so green. But how can he get rid of them? There was Peter's head. It was a tempting target, a very tempting target. Henry's sprout flicking fingers, inched closer. No, thought Horrid Henry. I can't blow it now, I'm so close. Should he throw them on the floor? Should he put them in a napkin? Or, Horrid Henry started to beam. There was a little drawer in the table in front of Henry's chair, a perfect Brussels sprout-sized drawer. Henry eased it open. What could be simpler than stuffing a sprout or two inside and just pretending to eat it? Soon the drawer was full. Henry's plate was empty. Mum, Dad, look, all gone, he said gleefully. Well done, Henry. Well done, Henry. We'll take you to Gobble and Go tomorrow. Yippee! Screamed Henry. Mum, Dad, and Peter walked up the street. Mum, Dad, and Peter walked down the street. Where was Gobble and Go? Where was the big flashing neon sign blaring music and purple walls? They must have walked past it. But how? Horrid Henry looked around wildly. It was impossible to miss Gobble and Go. It was so bright. You could see the neon sign for miles. There it is, said Horrid Henry. Oh no. Gobble and Go was gone. A new restaurant was in its place. The Veggie? The sign read. The all-new vegetarian vegetable restaurant. Horrid Henry gazed in horror at the menu outside. Cabbage casserole, pop-up peas, spinach surprise, sprouts a-go-go, and your choice of rhubarb or broccoli ice cream. Yum, said Perfect Peter. Look, Henry. Oh, it's serving all your new favourite vegetables. Horrid Henry opened his mouth to protest, and then he closed it. He knew when he'd been beaten.